So we hear the terms antioxidants, phytochemicals, micronutrients, nutrients, whatever you want to call it, that I like to call it micronutrients, which is antioxidants and phytochemicals under that umbrella. But you're really referring to all these micronutrients, all these little nutrients that we don't even know about. Like we only know the tip of the iceberg on a lot of them, right? But you always say
Right.
the thing about broccoli, the secret ingredient in broccoli or the secret nutrient in broccoli is broccoli. Can you explain that?
Yeah, because we know that the most powerful cancer and longevity promoting nutrients are most likely the ITCs, the isothiocyanates and green cruciferous vegetables, probably at the top of longevity promoting foods. But in with the ITCs in broccoli, there are probably more than 500 other chemical compounds that aid to the body's longevity. So we're saying if we just took the ITC out of the broccoli and put it into a pill and took that without the whole broccoli, it wouldn't have the same benefits.
We don't even know all of the micronutrients.
We don't know all those benefits. And plus you concentrate it without the other supporting orchestra, the whole symphony orchestra of sounds. It doesn't work as well. It's like people take vitamin E and they don't get longevity effects. Because when we eat the vitamin E from nuts and seeds, there's 8 different vitamin E fragments all working together, not just one fragment you took in a pill. So that's right. The most active ingredient in broccoli is the broccoli itself, because there's more than 500 nutrients in there that work together.
And that science can't really replicate.
We haven't identified all of these nutrients. We haven't named them all. And right, in a strawberry, there's probably more than 500 nutrients in a strawberry. So nature is quite, the matrix of the food is quite complicated. And we can't just try to think that we can use a vitamin supplement that's going to take the place of all these complicated substances that are found in natural foods. So, especially if you can create organic foods that are grown on good soils.
So although you're an advocate for smart supplementation will never take the place of a healthy diet. So no matter what marketing campaign is behind, take this and you'll be healthy, it will never replace a healthy diet.
That's right. You have to have, the basis has to be your healthy diet. Then you look at that healthy diet and you say, is there any enhancements that could be made through supplementation? But if you don't have the foundation there, the guts of the architecture of the building, the supplements aren't going to do anything.
Right.
The supplements just filling in a couple of things that you might be a little low in. You're low in B12, you should take that. But there's 10,000 nutrients that you needed to have, not just B12. But your weakness is the one nutrient you're missing. So that leads to the other basic principle is comprehensive nutritional adequacy, which means that you have to have not just a high concentration of nutrients in the tissues, but the diversity of nutrients have to include all the things the human body needs, right? And that's where we get into the next determinant of human longevity has to do with the fatty acid profile of your tissues. So particularly adequacy in the omega-3 fatty acid family. So omega-3 adequacy means ALA, which is the short chain omega-3 that's found in flax seeds, walnuts, hemp seeds, chia seeds, and green vegetables have ALA. And even if you took the long chain omega-3, EPA and DHA from fish oil or algae oil and plant-based ones, even if you took a lot of that stuff, you're still not going to get ideal omega-3 coverage unless you also have the exposure to ALA through flax seeds and walnuts. We need the whole, it's not enough to have it because there's no retro conversion from the long chain back to the short chain. You still got to have the short chain. And that's where I published a study on this I think the study was published about 2 or 3 years ago. It was about how you need to eat nuts and seeds for heart disease prevention and reversal. And that if you take out the nuts and seeds and make your diet too low in fat, you increase the risk of sudden cardiac death and cardiac arrhythmias like atrial fibrillation. Because there have been famous physicians advocating plant-based diets that are extremely low in fat with no nuts and seeds and avocado as a means of reversing heart disease. And the data is overwhelmingly corroborative, showing that there's more than 100 studies. And in this article, I used 50 scientific references showing how nuts and seeds prevents cardiovascular death and how it does so. And one of the mechanisms is that ALA stabilizes the heart against irregular heartbeat.
Oh, wow. I think this is just personally great news for everyone because they also are so delicious. Great sauces, great in desserts. They're really fun to eat and incorporate into your diet. So we have the all the healthy, colorful vegetables and fruits that provide a lot of micronutrients. Then we have the nuts and seeds providing a good amount of short chain omega-3 fatty acids and ALA.
Right.
And that does what you were telling me about the proteins.
Well, we're going to talk about the animal protein and the plant protein mixture, but finishing up the fatty acid thing is the ALA is the short chain, but now can the body take the exposure to an adequate enough of ALA, and can we make enough long chain without eating fish or fish products? I just want to cover that.
Sure.
And the answer is that some people can make enough because they genetically have enough conversion enzyme and their omega-3 index can be adequate without supplementation. But most vegans do not make adequate. That person is like 20%, 10%. Most people on plant-only diets or vegan diets, even if they have adequate ALA exposure, still don't make the ideal amounts of the adequate enough of the DHA and EPA for the brain, because it's your lifetime exposure to an adequate index that's linked in scientific studies to size of the brain and risk of dementia with aging. So we have more than 20 studies that corroborate each other showing that this omega-3 index, measuring the EPA and DHA, not the ALA, correlates with not just brain size, but also with lifespan. That it's a determinant of lifespan. That lower omega-3 index is a risk factor for shorter lifespan from all cause mortality. So now we have an extra determinant of longevity. We talked about phytochemical concentration of the cells, phytochemical diversity, body fat percent, low body toxicity. Now we have the omega-3 index and ALA exposure being a fifth determinant of longevity.
My question for that is, you mentioned it's important for someone not eating fish or vegan, plant-based, nutritarian. What about someone that has meat occasionally or, eats red meat, chicken, and is starting to eat healthier?
What you're asking the question, how much loss of lifespan would happen if a person occasionally ate animal products? What's the question?
Not yet.
What's the question per se?
What about supplementing with DHA EPA? What about fish oil? Because does that only come from fish? What about someone that eats meat or occasional meat?
Meat, you don't get enough. You don't get DHA EPA from commercial raised meat. You get a little bit in wild meat, but not enough to supply adequate levels for the aging brain. So meat is not a good source.
So even if you eat occasionally meat, it's important for you to make sure you're fulfilling your fatty acid needs as well.
Or to know your omega-3 index. It's a simple blood test. You can check your omega-3 index. Most people that eat meat, don't eat seafood, still have a poor omega-3 index. Most people who don't supplement get most of their omega-3 from seafood. We're talking about fish and clams and oysters and shellfish. Those are, people think, and perhaps seafood is one of those flip-flops. It's really critical here because maybe 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, adding some seafood to the diet in small amounts added to longevity. Old literature, seafood is a longevity promoting food because it supplies us with EPA and DHA, but without saturated fat that can cause heart disease, and also it gives us B12 and zinc in a good level. It has these nutrients that humans need in a good level. But in the recent last 3 or 4 decades, with the dumping of garbage, plastics, into the ocean, and with the runoff, the agricultural runoff of increased nitrogen, we have so much toxicity in the ocean and so much toxicity in inland lakes as well, that seafood went from a lifespan enhancing food to a lifespan hurting food. And now we have more infertility, more birth defects, linked to these long-term toxins that live in the body for years after exposure to seafood. And now we have definitive science showing that exposure to lake fish, because of the growth of algae and the cyanobacteria that live on the algae causing a toxin called BMAA. It's not just plastics and chemicals and pesticides and herbicides. It's also just bacteria growing in the lakes from all the agricultural runoff, all the extra nitrogen and organic matter being dumped into waterways. So now lake fishes become toxic, and you have clusters of ALS, Parkinson's dementia syndrome around people who eat lake fish. And then we have people who live near the coast, like Chesapeake Bay, increased clustering of ALS and Parkinson's around people eating shellfish. coastal water fish, particularly bivalves and shellfish, were high in these toxins and plastics and BMAA. So now fish has become a negative, where in small amounts it could have been a positive if we didn't make the environment so toxic.
And I think this is why some people say nutrition is so confusing, or it constantly changes, or you hear different advice, because it does change. The environment has such a profound impact on what we eat. So it's important to stay up to date and make it interesting.